It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Rob. This is my State of the Dungeon address for the game that took place on May 28th, 2020. The game, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Quarantine Edition. So we played over Discord. We played over Roll20. This was Greg's game, so yes, I was playing Galhard, of course. When we had last played, we were in a, what looked like it was a temple. Underground, the tomb of the deceased mage. With his blessings, we had gone into the back rooms, which turned out to be this temple. Dedicated to the Yuan-Ti's minions, their gods of Mershok and Set. We had tangled with a few of the Yuan-Ti and their lizard men guards first, but now we were kind of depleted and on a landing between a staircase going up behind us, where we had come from, a staircase going down, and a wide hallway off to one side. When we had stopped, the Clericytheon was in the middle of casting a healing spell for us, but we could see that some of the defenders of the temple, a couple of lizard men, four lizard men and 2 Yuan-Ti, were coming up the hallway, probably attracted to our light. So we had kind of ducked back around to hold them off. So at this point, I'm just going to say this. Apparently, the cosmos, luck, whatever, decided that this time Galhard was going to take a bit of a backseat from the juggernaut of chaos that he was in the prior session. His dice were stone cold, and this will not revolve around his misdeeds. So, the Yuan-Ti came up and along, their lizard men came along first, and before anybody really exposed themselves to a lot of danger, one of the Yuan-Ti came around the corner and looked up at us. Now, Glint was very, very quick, and he hurled 3 hammers and nailed that Yuan-Ti, who then turned, looked up at him, and made a suggestion, wouldn't you rather just talk it out? Which he failed his resistance to. So he didn't want to throw hammers anymore. Well, at this point then, my character, Galhard, is like, oh, you don't want to fight? You want to talk? Okay. So he moved down into talking range while holding a javelin, which clearly meant skewering range to this guy, if anything other than talking happened. Well, the lizard men fanned out, several of them stopping to attack Galhard, and the others went up the stairs, which meant I got a free stroke in on that one, and I unloaded on the Yuan-Ti as well with my spear, and grazed him. No raging going on, just, fighting. Well, things didn't go so well for the lizard men. First of all, it turns out that Lydia is a force of destruction, just leaving a swath of ruin behind with the longsword she's wielding now two-handedly, and just putting these lizard folk down without much of a fight at all. Of course, also not helping this whole process out is we had, Glint was still throwing hammers, but also there was some additional thumpage from Kytheon moving down and wielding his mace with a vengeance. And, of course, it's not a good thing to try to forget about our redoubtable ranger, who, in terms of lizard man killing, is an expert, charging down with his scimitars, flailing about, and again, ruining his opponents. The lizard men dropped quite quickly. Then, the Yuan-Ti who was down the hall was shooting. When he saw how fast those lizard men died, he took off running. We didn't pursue. We were too busy trying to get rid of the Yuan-Ti, who died like that right afterwards. I honestly can't say who killed him. I think it might have been Glint firing another salvo. No, Glint decided he was going to kill lizard folk because he only wanted to talk to the Yuan-Ti because of the suggestion. I believe it was Belphegor who came down and finished off the Yuan-Ti. So with that, Glint was free of any kind of compulsion, and he participated in the fight. One of the lizard folk, the last one remaining, decided he was going to run down the stairs, and Lydia took him out with a crossbow bolt in the back. So the encounter ended. We kind of gathered up our things, decided what we were going to do. There was a few calls for going back up and healing, but realistically, we knew that the whole area could be up in arms right now, and if we attacked, we could kind of catch them on their heels. So Balthagor moved up to kind of see, or no, Kytheon moved up to see what was up one of the side hallways from the main hall off of the landing, and he found a new friend. Where's the friend? I'm so proud of this miniature. I only have had this one opportunity to use it. Miniature doesn't work very well for him. The Yuan Ti Abomination came out after him. And he took it in stride. He's like, well, they're down here. So the rest of us moved up. Galhard dropped his spear, picked up his axe, moved up, decided this thing was rage-worthy, raged, frenzied, moved up, and a cluster of just failure and futility ensued. Dice hated me. So the rest came up, and even though it's a tough monster, little difficult to hit, it didn't take long before the group just shredded it. Balthagor moving in with his weapons, getting all those attacks in. His Scimitar of Speed really gives him an extra dimension on the combat. And of course, Lydia moving in is just ruin with Talon. Just knocking off 20 hit points at a strike, and yeah, it's a level of carnage that was unable to be kept up by pretty much anybody. Even Glint coming over and throwing those hammers really whittles down those big creatures quickly. So there were some Yuan Ti beyond that, and they tried doing the mind trickery magic. Didn't have a chance on Galhard. He can't be affected with those things when he's raging. And the others managed to make their saving throws this time. So when the big creature died, we immediately dove in to go and engage with those Yuan Ti, who at the time really didn't see retreat as an option. So they fought and died to the creature. We took minimal damage in that fight. But it was a conflict that again ended up very much the group just consolidated in and completely shredded them. And again, Galhard didn't do very much. He menaced with glittering spikes, but that's about it. So the group chopped them down, and what really kind of absolutely sealed the deal was Kytheon cast his Spirit Guardians, and that slowed and damaged the big abomination, but it also really was rocking the world of Yuan Ti as he moved up into their midst. So they couldn't retreat, they died to a snake. So after that, we rolled their bodies. There really wasn't much except for one. One of them had a scimitar that had a wavy blade, and the end of it was fashioned as a snake. Kind of an unusual aesthetic. But it seemed to suit Balthagor, so he picked it up as a second weapon, so now he's dual-wielding scimitars. They seem to be pretty good, too. We moved up into the next chamber, which was a deep pit with a ledge lining around the outside of it. This was another spawning pit for their snakes. It was actually connected to the pit at the bottom of the pillar fall. So if we were going to try to kill every single snake in the place and kill all these baby Yuan Ti, it would be a pain. Or not so much, because we have Kytheon who could just keep summoning Sacred Flame down and smushing them in batches. Wasn't any problem we had with doing that, so they all died. We found out that out of that room there was another passage leading back down into the main hall, but there was a door at the end of it. After we had finished destroying all of the baby Yuan Ti that we could, we went there, we did all of the appropriate, be ready at the door. We don't have a rogue, so we barely looked at the door for traps. And Glint goes into the room. Glint is very daring today, even eschewing in some battles, throwing his hammers, or moving up and murdering with his hammers. But he goes into the room and immediately starts to get sick, because this is the lizard room slave's room, and there's this big festering pile of their waste in one corner. Nothing they could do about it. But the entire effect sickened him, and we had to wait for him to lose his lunch. Then we went back into the main hall, which brought us back to a choice of different avenues we could take. The first one is a long hall that we believe the lizard man, or the Yuan Ti who retreated, went down. But first of all, we checked another side passage that we had found before that. It was actually a doorway that we only revealed as we moved down the corridor. Opening that up, we found a large oval-shaped room with a couple of large snake statues, large asps, poised as if to strike. The group really didn't pay them any mind. Galahad eventually searched through them and found a potion, some coins in depressions in the floor, but for the most part, nothing too tremendous. There were two doors leading out of that room, other than the one we came in. One of them led down a hall, in the middle of which was a carpet, and the other one led to a short hallway with another door at the end of it. Apparently that carpet freaked us out a little bit, but Glint went down and immediately took darts in the back. Poison darts. He's a dwarf. Not too bad. And then, as we were negotiating dealing with that, he went down, having basically disarmed that trap, finding the pressure plate and spiking it. The carpet that was in the middle of the room was a carpet of smothering, which he dealt with easily enough. It didn't have a chance to do anything to him. So we rolled it up and kept it. Why not? We continued along and found that it led into a prison area. Pretty bare. There's only one prisoner, an emaciated elf. So we went in, we talked to the elf. The elf told us he's been a prisoner there for quite a while. He's not a slave. He won't give them what they want. So they've kept him in here and abused him. He told us a little bit about the matriarch of the place, how they had two of those Uanti abominations, so now they're down to one, and that there were more guardians that we needed to worry about. So we, took the information, and we were going to let him leave and try to get out, and he's like, "Oh, thank Tiamat." So we killed him. So Galhard's like, "I don't know that you're not a doppelganger." Poof. Knocked him out, broke his neck. No cultists live. So we went back and we went down the short hallway, and that took us into a large, somewhat diamond-shaped room. This room appeared to be some sort of communal worship area. There were shrines set into the walls, and two in particular, a shrine of Mershalk, god of ophidians, reptiles, and things, and Set, god of evil and settiness. Had piles of treasure and stuff for them to worship, things they'd obviously pulled out of things. There were snakes all over the place, but they didn't give us any bother. So the group was in there looking around, and Galahad was still examining those statues, when the snakes started all filing into two suits of armor that were lying on the ground next to a couple of swords. And they rose up, and the snakes served as the body that was moving the armor around, including snakes entwined around the swords to swing the swords. Here's the problem. They had swords and shield. They had the swords, shields, and plate armor. Plate armor plus shield means pretty good armor class. We had a heck of a time just hitting them. By the time Galahad went in there, he didn't hit once. Again, this was a kind of a trend. Galahad's futility in fighting in this session. But fortunately, Glint was going in, nailing with hammers, and of course, Lydia just carving into them. Even Kytheon got into the fray and smashed one or two. But for the most part, it was a fight that the armor couldn't win. We just had too many attacks incoming. When they hit, they didn't hit all that hard, and they did poison damage, which we have two dwarves. For some reason, they were all going after Balthagor, who, Balthagor, as a stout fighter, was swinging back at them with a vengeance, but they all seemed to concentrate on him. It turned because he's got that snaky sword. So we eventually destroyed both of these suits of armor, and When they collapsed, the snakes, the armor, the weapon, the shields, all dissolved. So no loot from that. We looted the rest of the room. The biggest treasures we found were in the statues of the gods. They had eyes of large rubies, which we pried loose. Each of them is worth about 1,000 gold, so we did get some treasure out of this. And I don't think any of us really felt all that bad about defacing the snake god statues. So then there was one more hallway to negotiate. We went to the end of the first hall we went to, down the long hallway. It turned and came into a temple. Excuse me. A full-on evil temple. Large statues off to either side. I really like to know who they get to make these statues for evil temples. But there's got to be somebody out there who makes a tidy amount of money on these things. At the end was an altar and a raised dais. There was the matriarch of the Yuan-Ti. And she was holding the dwarf wizard that we were there to get. Yarick? Yaren? Anyhow, the white worm speaker. The abomination was off to one side, but clearly he would have participated had we gone charging in. A couple more Yuan-Ti on the ground in front. And the matriarch's like, you know, you guys have done a lot of damage here. And I hate you, and there's everything in me that wants to see you dead. That being said, I'm willing to let you live, and you can even take this, the dwarf, with you, if you'll swear to leave and not molest any more of my people. Considering the entire population of the temple was just what was in this room, we had wiped everything else out, we were like... We had a discussion. Basically it was, we really want to kill everything in here. My character's completely out of rage. Still over 100 hit points, but completely out of rage and has not been effective. The rest of the group, still in pretty good form. We've had rests, we've patched ourselves up. So the fight would probably still end up with us winning, depending on how powerful the spellcaster the matriarch was and how fast we could take her down. And we really didn't care if she killed the dwarf. Really wasn't that big of a deal. Had she killed the dwarf, we just take the dwarf with us. Hey, you can resurrect him. Oh no, you can deny resurrection if you want. But realistically, one of our priorities was to bring the dwarf back alive. They want to talk to this guy and ask him some pointed questions, possibly with pointy objects. So ultimately we decided that to make the Lord's Alliance the happiest and maybe get the most useful information so that we can fight the cult the most effectively, we would do the lesser evil, which is letting these Yuan-Ti live for a while, and then just go back and get out of town. With our quarry in tow. And we thought, yeah, okay, fine, it's a good idea. We'll take your offer. We won't do any more damage to you. We'll take the dwarf and we'll leave. One of our group found out that she had a dagger which had belonged to the dwarf, and he tried to bargain for it and failed. So we have the dwarf. Yay. And we went back, and on the way out, Galhard was like, I got a question. We tried to fill your basin over there, and we couldn't. The water kept drying out too quickly. There's nothing we could do. What's the trick? Because Galhard doesn't like riddles that he can't solve. And the dead wizard, Dendelium? Can't remember this guy's name. I don't know why. It's a good name. Dedarius. Yeah, Dedarius. Dedarius said, oh, that's probably my fault. Well, all you need is a drop of holy water. Just a couple drops of holy water in the basin will make it work. Or you can just open up the gate and the sluice, pour water in, and the water will get in fast enough that it'll work. And we're like, oh, okay. So we're like, okay, well, you know what? We can use this scrying device before we leave. It's an opportunity we might not get again. So I believe Glint borrowed some holy water from Kythion, went over, splashed a couple of drops in. Instantly the The water spread itself out impossibly to cover the bottom of the basin. It opened up a well of blackness. Some black fire kind of rose up, and we're like, ooh. And then something happened. We all had to make a wisdom save, and nobody made it. So I have no idea what's going to happen. That is the cliffhanger we find ourselves in. So until next time, we'll have to tell you what happens. This has been the State of the Dungeon. I'm Rob. Thanks for joining me, and farewell.